is no Fausty witch of them all. Where is the Faustiest witch of them all? He is finishing off a consultation with someone that's a little bit worried. I believe that we despise her, which is not true. Okay, intolerance, Candy. If you're watching, and you probably will be, all is forgiven. Do not worry. Okay. Right. So today, I don't know what the subject is. Something like Ropey Reiki or something like that. I think it was Ropey Reiki. So energy healing work, crystals. Look, crystals. Yeah. Talking about healing. Okay. Now there's a certain thing that's going on this week. Today's Sunday, obviously, and on the Tuesday coming soon, I've been asked by people that should know better to do I believe it's a magical healing workshop. So teaching people how to do the magical healings and stuff like that. I do hope that my crystal dildos are going to arrive in time from eBay. They're second hand. I'm not spending a lot of money if it's just one healing workshop, I'm going to get the second-hand ones, but it's all right. I'll disinfect them before I give them all to the neo-pagans to wave about, do energy healing work with. I hope everything arrives in time, but I do wonder whether there are certain people that did ask me to do this, whether they really know what they're letting themselves in for, because although I have prepared some show and tell objects, I don't plan on writing any sort of curriculum or speech or anything to go with this course. I'm literally going to turn up and start talking. So that's going to be a lot like one of these Fausty Witches episodes, which is going to be great. I hope they let us record it. I don't know whether they will or not, but maybe. Here's hoping. It could be quite good. So this is kind of, to a certain extent, almost like a warm-up, I guess, because I'm not really preparing anything. Chris isn't here yet, so I guess I should just start talking about, well, energy healing work and stuff, because there's this thing in neo-pagan, new agey, modern magic, quote unquote, about energy healing work. You see a lot about it in a complementary, well, realistically alternative medicine, not so much in complementary medicine, but maybe in the kind of ropey woo-woo-y kind of sorts of medicine. Energy healing work where you can just lay crystals on someone and that somehow cures their cancer. Now this is a big issue for me personally. I see this as a problem. Now I've met a lot of people over the years, and they've had serious health conditions, like really serious health conditions. They're in chronic pain. They've got a lot of issues, right? And I do feel something, I guess. I don't know, I'm a sociopath, aren't I? So I guess I don't really feel sympathy or emotion, but I feel something. I do think that it is not quite right that there are people out there that are going to take advantage of the sick and needy, right? There's a lot of people that are prepared to take advantage of them. And I think, coming from the position that I come from, which is a practicing witch, magical practitioner, someone that teaches and also practices, and also that people, literally professional witchcraft hire out to very often deal with, sometimes healing stuff and that kind of thing. I think that the biggest voice for misinformation and the people that need to call out these abhorrent scumbags that go around charging obscene amounts of money for healing work, taking advantage is what it is, they need to be called out on. Now, most of the time it's skeptics and doctors and stuff like that that are calling them out, and I don't think that should be the case. Very often, yes, if you're a skeptic, then pipe up, give us your opinion and such. If you're a doctor and you are specializing in medicine, because that's what doctors do, medical doctors anyway, and they are saying, look, don't give up your medications in exchange for licking a crystal at the beginning of each day, probably not going to help with your specific condition. Eileen, if you're listening. I think that we, as magical practitioners, do ourselves and our community a disservice by not addressing the issues of charlatans and troublemakers in magical healing, which is what I'd like to do primarily today, is what the focus of my workshop will be. I think maybe it depends what mood I'm in, I guess. But at the moment in today, I'm in a bitch call them out type mood. So within alternative and complementary medicine, there are some people that do adhere to guidelines, and they conduct themselves in a professional manner. So whether it is, pseudoscience practitioners from the psychology field that sign up to various things and, are to a certain extent regulated and got qualifications and shit, right? Certificates. Or whether it would be people like aromatherapists, for example, or herbalists and stuff like that, which go through a certain amount of formal training and then agree, they join like an association or something like that and agree to certain guidelines, certain ways of practicing, that kind of thing. There's a certain amount of regulation, not a huge amount, but some regulation. And then you're comparing that to Madam, I don't know, let's say Madam Bernadette, who charges £50 a Reiki healing session and makes some very, very, very iffy claims. Okay. She makes some rather iffy claims about telling people, yeah, you need to stop letting your kids get vaccinated. She makes some very iffy claims about, oh, well, back in the day, energy healing and all that sort of thing, and we didn't get sick because we were in June with nature and such like that, and that kind of thing. It makes, basically, from a Western perspective, of anyone that probably went to school and isn't a complete inept idiot, makes claims that you'd think, this is somewhat iffy. This is somewhat iffy, Madam Bernadette. I'm going to pay you the 50 quid, just because there may be something there, which the majority of clients, okay, the majority of good clients that you get as a professional witch, that kind of thing, will be skeptical clients, okay? Because the skeptical clients come and they say, look, I'm interested in seeing what you offer. I'm interested in seeing what you can do and if you can explain it and all that kind of thing. The difficult clients and the troublesome clients are the ones that come and they say, oh, I love alternative complementary medicine, Reiki healing, crystal healing, all that kind of thing. I think that Western, I don't trust doctors, I don't trust this, I don't trust that. Those are the people that very often I get a little bit worried about. People that have drank the Kool-Aid, like joined the kind of bandwagon or cult. There is a certain demographic of such people, but I'm not about to go into that now, partly because I'm probably going to upset people and make sweeping generalizations. No smoke without fire. But, what I want to focus on is I want to focus on the pros and cons to things like Reiki and energy healing and stuff like that. And we need to start thinking about the broader concept of complementary medicine or alternative medicine. I prefer complementary medicine because I don't think it's an alternative in saying no to medical science. I think there should be something that gets added to medical science. Okay, which now things and people are starting to come around to that idea. There are certain complementary medicines and practices and therapies and stuff that are available in some hospitals and hospices and stuff like that. But it's a very difficult area because at the end of the day, when it comes to witchcraft, professional magic and such, it is all about reputation. Okay, people come to me because either they're willing to take a punt and they see, Thoth witchcraft just stumble across this and they kind of think, this person sounds somewhat interesting. They know what they're doing when it comes to magic. I'll get them to do it for me, right? Or realistically, where most people come from, or most paying clients come from, it is through referrals from other people. So it is they know someone that I've done work for before, or they know someone that knows someone that's done work that I've done work for before. It's basically reputation. My reputation that I've built up over a certain amount of time having done this, right? So with that, with anything, it is all reputation based with most professional witches. The ones that I mistrust the most are the ones that use like serious dodgy marketing, the sort of people that are trying to sell you get rich quick courses, and they're using that sort of in your face marketing and then applying that to healing and curing cancer and stuff like that. You'll find no shortage of those sorts of people on social media and on the internet and stuff like that. That always worries me, because as a practitioner, I think that most of the work that you should be doing is coming from you trading upon your reputation. Okay. And at the end of the day, reputation is all we have, because we don't have an international whizzing gamot council thing that, you know, we don't really have Hogwarts in the form of like in Harry Potter and stuff like that. You have to have graduated in order to practice magics and stuff like that, or someone comes and steals your wand off of you, some government or something. What we have is we have governmental guidelines, regulations and stuff like that. There's a hell of a lot of wiggle room in that to cause absolute devastation for the everyday people. And I'm not one of these people, because I'm a fairly liberal person. I'm not one of these people that want government regulation with things, because generally speaking, it can stunt innovation. And when you force people to do things a certain way for a certain amount of time, it stagnates everything. And it does mean that if that practice is wrong, that is the only practice. That practice is wrong, but you're forcing other people to adopt that practice because it's part of a regulation, or, you know, this, that, and the other guidelines. You kind of think, well, okay, so you're forcing all of these herbalists or people to use this potion or not use that, and yet. Anyway, I think I'm going off on a tangent now, aren't I? Crystal hasn't joined us, so yeah, so this is something that I think is really important. So one of the most complex, I would say, forms of magic is healing magic. For the simple reason that when you do hexing, cursing, black magic, baneful magic and stuff like that, you're breaking. And as anyone in construction stuff will tell you, it's generally a lot easier to destroy something than it is to fucking build something. And even more so, is even more difficult to renovate something. Okay, anyone that's had to restore listed buildings will tell you that you are absolutely shitting yourself when you're trying to refurbish, restore, renovate something when there's certain grade 2 or grade 3 listed features, and you're like, I fucking hope that ceiling doesn't come crashing down on that glorious mosaic floor or that fireplace, you know, that kind of thing. Chris, have you heard any of what I've been talking to? Because I've been slating our fellow practitioners here.
No. I missed it.
I know.
Soz.
No, yeah. You've been dealing with the intolerant Scandi, the one that's probably been crying about upsetting us.
Oh.
That she ain't upset us. Don't worry, Chris. I've already officially forgiven her in front of public.
Oh, okay. She seems to forget we don't have emotions.
Yeah. I took that emotional chip out a long time ago.
Well, you said earlier you were trying to put it back in.
I was trying to experiment with practicing my emotions in front of the mirror. You know, that's what they teach you to do. So you blend in with your fellow mankind and that, right?
You were doing some conditioning.
To judge other people's emotions. You know, I used to have the flashcards the teacher used to give. It was kind of like emojis. There was a crying one, and you learn that means upset, which means crying, which means you did something bad, presumably, or they're already bad. They don't tell you which it is, though. That's the problem. You see someone crying, and I don't know if it's because I've made them cry or whether they was just crying anyway. But there we go. We're going on a sidetrack now. So I was talking about the really dangerous aspects of this is that You know, people coming along, dodgy Reiki practitioners, dodgy energy healers, dodgy people that say, no, don't let your kids get vaccinated, dodgy people saying, no, throw out Western medicine completely, don't trust doctors, all that kind of thing. And regulation not being something that's realistically going to be useful, because forcing everyone to behave in a certain way stagnates. It can help, regulation can help to a certain extent, but it is, you give with one hand and take with the other, you know, because it can stunt innovation and such as well. So I was wondering, now you're here, what do you think the worst type of magical healer there is out there?
Ooh.
In terms of causing the most amount of devastation for their patients slash, you know, clients?
Oh, okay. Well, me personally, anyone that uses Tibetan singing bowls,
Ooh.
just because I'm often concerned that they'll trigger me, almost like a sleeper cell agent is, and I'll kill everybody.
Is that what the Russians programmed you? Is it the Tibetan singing bowls they programmed you with?
Yes.
Ah, are you supposed to admit that?
Don't know.
Pretty sure you're not supposed to admit that.
Putin don't scare me.
Putin?
There lives a certain man in Russia today who doesn't like anyone who is gay. People look at him with terror and fear, and he never dresses up in tight leather gear. Rah, 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 Putin, hater of all Russian queens. I'm not pleased to see you, it's a gun in my pocket.
The name of the god and goddess, please protect Lady Snake.
She needs to protect him from the Putin.
Oh, okay.
She needs to protect him from the Putin. So, okay, so if someone came to you, say, for example, Lady Snake comes to you, she said, Chris, I admit I'm fucking incompetent, okay? I can't do, I've got the big C, okay, chlamydia, and, or is that the little C? I think that's the little C. I've got the little C, chlamydia, okay? The doctors, they're not prescribing me or doing anything that is responding to it. I've watched your video or Liam's video or one of your videos, I can't remember which one it was, about magically induced cramps, and I'm thinking maybe I have magically induced chlamydia. Please, can you tell me what the best type of healer it is I can go to, please, at my local psychic fair? Should I stay away from the Reiki people because I hear you take the piss out of them? Should I go more for like a chakra realigning? What sort of people should I be staying away from, and why? Can you be, especially in your answer, stereotypical, please? She said.
Okay. It's a tricky one, because there are lots of, you know, use. Most of them would be fine in the sense that they're not going to do a great deal of help other than possibly make you feel a little bit better for a few days until the problem returns. And the reason for that being is they're not dealing with the core problem. They're putting a band-aid on it or a plaster. So a lot of these processes, because they don't teach you how, like if you were to go away for a weekend retreat, I'm using that word loosely, with a kind of a set of Tibetan monks, they're going to go through a process with you, and by the end of that process, you should have come out with it better because you've gone through the whole process. What we tend to do is we go and see someone for a Indian head massage or a Reiki healing session, or a bloody chakra realignment. We go for these things thinking they're going to fix the problem, but they don't. They're the same way that you go and see a massage therapist, where you go, I'm feeling shit now. I need you to help me feel less shit. I know I'm going to see you again in 3 months' time because the problem is I've got too much stress at work, or I'm working too hard on the building yard and I'm not lifting properly. Or my personal problem, you know, my back hurts because I'm too fat. All that weight on the front is pulling on the base of my spine. The only way I'm ever going to feel better is if I lose weight. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, they're not solving the problem. They're making you feel better. That doesn't mean that they're a bad thing, but you need to be aware that they're not fixing the problem. The problem's still there. Chakra realignment is great, but are they going to diagnose with you why your chakras were out of position in the first place? Are they going to tell you what you can do to improve? No.
Yes, a meditation which you can buy on a CD for $29.99.
Okay.
Or if you spend 30 quid, you'll get 2 CDs.
Yeah.
One
Well,
has music on.
You can go on YouTube now, can't you, and get these kind of
binaural beat type things.
Yeah, where they'll play certain frequencies and they're supposed to realign everything. Obviously, what they mean by realign in the first place is clear the gunk out of that well. That particular well, that's what the realignment is doing, because that assumes that things are supposed to be straight by definition. We know that's not the case. You just heard Putin talking about it.
There's many people have campaigned to have the right to be bent, Chris.
Yeah, many
people.
All over the world.
All over the world. Some people still are.
Yeah. So the tricky thing with the chakra system, I don't know what you're expecting me to talk about, Liam. If we're talking about chakra systems deliberately.
No. I'm talking about what you think as the stereotypical worst types of practitioners out there, right? Because there are certain ones that come up constantly in lawsuits, and there are certain ones that come up constantly that the skeptics talk about, right? Because you don't get a huge amount of problems with things like the herbalists, Western herbalists. You don't get a huge amount of problems with them. Chiropractors, on the other hand, they seem like the dodgiest fucking bunch of them all. Because whenever I look at the marketing as well, it's like, I'm Dr. such and such. Dr. Frink. What's that one? Dr. Nick from The Simpsons, the dodgy doctor. Hi, it's Dr. Nick. Have you got this? Have you got that? You need to check out my new snake oil. I mean, my new potion. Blah, 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 blah. I'm a doctor. You can trust me. And it's kind of like you're a chiropractor. Whenever you've got a dodgy doctor, it turns out a lot of the time he's not a medical doctor, he's a chiropractor. And I'm finding that potentially there might be some good chiropractors out there. Potentially, I don't know. Haven't met one yet. But I am open to the idea of that. But whenever you see certain ones that come up as causing most of the harm, and bearing in mind, people come to us as our job very often to fix problems, medical problems, healing issues, that kind of thing. And when we find out, okay, so when things started getting worse, oh, well, I saw Madam such and such at the local psychic fair. It's like, oh my God, that explains a lot. So there's certain ones that crop up. I'm not saying that the whole system is a piece of shit, although I think that there are a lot of systems out there that are a piece of shit because people have graduated from colleges and have learned those systems, apparently, sometimes spending a lot of money learning those systems, and they've come out with it having studied to be a master Reiki practitioner, not being able to fix the simplest of conditions. Okay. So I was just going by the stereotypes of what you think people should be specifically aware of and why that is. Because the herbalists, you've got National Institute of Herbalists, you've got qualifications and stuff that you go through, you've got, whole, do no harm or don't make the situation worse. You've got all of these kind of things.
Okay.
You don't necessarily have that with other ones.
Okay. I think I can probably, I don't know if this is right, but I would say anything that doesn't involve a consultation beforehand, you should be questioning how the process works. I'm not saying you should avoid it. I'm saying that, because if you went to see a herbalist, you would have a consultation before they provided a treatment. So they would ask you a certain amount of questions before you start it. So the same with if you went to see an osteopath, you would go and have a consultation with them before you started. So that in itself should be enough to say, okay, well, this person clearly is interested in me. Not that the first thing that you come in is someone hands you a wand and they go up and down your body and do some kind of body scan and aren't able to tell you what the problem is. So to me, there needs to be a certain level of diagnosis before I'm trusting that practitioner. I think that's safe enough? Because I don't want to say all yoga instructors are bad, or because I quite like yoga, you know, or I don't want to say all chiropractors are bad because I have met good ones.
Really?
I think there are bad apples in any. There are just kind of general groups I don't particularly like. So I don't like Reiki in general, but that's because the people that practice it here in the Western world have an approach where they actually believe I went on a 3-day course and that's enough to make me a master. You're using the word master. If you're going to use that word, you really should be able to say, okay, well, when did you make your masterpiece now? And what was that? And what did you have to do? Like, don't get me wrong, both of us have been on herbalist courses. I wouldn't call myself a herbalist.
I would.
I
but
haven't.
only when I'm talking to another herbalist to piss them off.
Yeah. Whereas I know herbalists that have their own apothecaries. I want to use that word rather than pharmacy. I also dealt with a lot of them clinically, when I worked for the doctors. So you were dealing with people that actually this was their profession. They are registered with official boards. They are certified. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, the second you start to talk about those sorts of professions, there should be checks and balances to say that actually this person is registered. Someone has said that they are meet a basic standard. Reiki practitioner is not one of those. So the fact that we say the word practitioner is often key to that. We don't say consultant, or do you know what I mean? Like, there are words in our language that are designed to teach you certain things. You don't go and see a doctor and he goes, I'm a master, does he? I'm a master of pharmacology, even though one of their degrees probably is master of pharmacology. Do you know what I mean? Like, they don't choose that word, and they also don't need to tell you you're a doctor.
Is it humility? Is that what you're saying, though? Is this what it is?
Maybe.
Because where I'm seeing some of the dangers, right, is I think that's really good what you've put about the consultation thing. So the consultation, and this is one of the reasons, right, is that when you're doing a consultation, you've got someone that is genuinely actually trying to understand the problem. Okay, even if they do a shit consultation, the very fact that there is a consultation as part of the treatment plan means that they are somehow trying to make an effort. Now, think about this in terms of a different industry. Barbers, if you go to the barbers and you sit down on the chair and they don't even ask you what you want done with your hair, you just get the buzzer and just start buzzering. That is not a very fucking good barber, right? What that is that's a cash cow. They're seeing, like, shearing sheep one after another after another. If you've got someone that is not willing to sit down and have a consultation with you and talk about the issue and try to understand your issue, I think the danger with that is that they're trying to sell your product. If they're saying 10 minutes on the sunbed, it's like, this is very iffy. And we know with sunbeds and stuff like that that is iffy, because there are people that go in there and don't work up to it and end up causing all sorts of problems. But the people that run those sunbed places, they don't give a shit. They just think of the money. They think of, I don't care. I put a sign up, said for your first minute, only spend 2 minutes or whatever the fuck it is in there. You know, that kind of thing. So the first one would be consultation. I think there is a dangerous sign, because they're just trying to sell you a product. You'll see this with a lot of multi-level marketing companies. They just want you to buy. Buy the copaiba oil. It's the new CBD. Buy that. You think CBD is great? You've heard it's great, didn't you? You need to buy this copaiba oil. Do it. You can't make any medicinal claims. No. We would never want to. But I mean, it's the new CBD. Buy it. and try it. You know, that kind of thing is like, this is a little bit worrying. The second thing that I would put on, which I think Reiki to a certain extent is one of the good ones for this. The thing that I want to say is you need to be very, very careful with healing practices and stuff that interfere with other systems and things. So if you've got, I'm not saying that you can't go to a healer of some description that is going to or can prescribe things that interfere with Western pharmaceuticals and stuff like that, because herbalists deal with this all the time, but they're trained to deal with things like that. They check what medications you're on, what they do, and prescribe accordingly, right? Doctors do that as well. Some of the systems that would be safe for someone to try potentially with something like Reiki, because you're not actually giving someone a medication or anything like that, is probably not going to have a negative impact on the physical body that can be proven in court, maybe on the energetic bodies, but nothing that can be provable in a mundane court of law. So that might be safer. But you also need to remember that if it's having a purely energetic component, that requires a considerable amount of magical knowledge, okay? Because there are many traditional cultural healing practices that work on a mundane level, what with medicinal herbs and potions and stuff, but also on an energetic level, right? When you're bypassing the stuff that just works on a mundane level, so you're bypassing the herbs and you're just saying, actually, all I'm going to do is I'm going to start thinking about rosemary and projecting that towards you. You've got to start thinking that's going to require some actual power and energy. So that would be one of the things that is a pro and a con, because it's not interacting with it, but because you're not actually doing anything with some of this homeopathic shite, that is going to require someone that really does seem to be someone that really knows their shit, right? Really knows what they're doing, because they're going to require a certain level of power, which leads me on to my next one. I don't know how you feel about this. If the person in question who is offering the therapy seems to be a complete fucking shambles themselves in their own life, I would not be trusting them, right? I'm not trusting them. I know that's similar to doctors. You know, you've got morbidly obese doctors that go out for a puff on a fag every 5 minutes that are saying, you know, you need to lose weight and stop smoking. I know that there are doctors out there that are like that, but ultimately, I mean, it's a little bit worrying that people are giving, and I find this fascinating in psychology because there's so many psychotherapists, normally as counselors, to be fair, that are so fucked up that they're supposed to be helping other people go through serious issues. In fact, I have had a number of clients which have been to counselors or therapists, and it's normally the CBD ones, cognitive behavioral therapy, where their therapist breaks down halfway through the session. And you're like, fucking hell, aren't you supposed to be a professional? And you're the one having a breakdown, and I'm the one that's coming to, you know, help me deal with my issues, and I'm having to pat you on the back and say, they're there.
I think part of that's a cultural thing, though, isn't it? Where we've got this idea that in order, and obviously it's probably one of my big bugbearers with the kind of, not to bring them up because you start on rants, but the alphabet people, which is this idea that you have
sure that, Chris.
No, that you have
that is no longer a psychological disorder. Okay.
No, not what I'm talking about, Liam. Okay. What I'm talking about is the fact that there is this cultural assumption that you have to have experienced something in order to be able to comment. So the idea, particularly with counsellors, there are lots of broken counsellors that are kind of like, oh, well, I've been there. And you trust them because they go, well, I've been there. I don't truly believe that a good psychologist has to have been almost sent to an asylum before they're actually qualified to be part of it. You trust that their educational system and understanding through research allows them to try and attempt to get an understanding. the same with a doctor. I don't need a doctor to have had all his limbs cut off before I think, oh, he might know something about broken legs now. And I think there's
say if it was the guideline that everyone that runs a secure psych ward, essentially a prison for crazy people with padded cells and the whole works, right? I think it would be absolutely fucking hilarious is that the qualification for being able to run one, that yes, you may need a degree or PhD, whatever, in psychology, but you also need to have been committed and discharged at some point in your life. So you have to have been an inmate that's released. I think that would be fascinating as an experiment in psychology in itself.
But you know what I mean? Like, obviously it's tricky to say, which will be in line with what Michelle's just messaged. It is tricky to say because I don't particularly like psychologists. I find psychologists tricky because, like Michelle has put here, there's a lot of them with multiple degrees in psychology, and I wouldn't trust them to trust them with the mental health of a cat. Is definitely a statement I would agree with. Because to me, psychology, to a certain extent, clinical side of psychology is slightly different, but general kind of sociology, etc., end of psychology is very much a pseudoscience. Mm-hmm. We know less about the brain than we know about the bottom of the ocean. So, they are definitely on the list of tryhards, not naturals. They're definitely on the list of tryhards. But ultimately, like I have no problem with the word practitioner, which is what I said earlier, if they are practicing. So for me, the best yoga instructors still go to yoga retreats several times a year. And they do because they're watching other practitioners work and are learning and adapting their process. That's why like herbalists, like proper clinical herbalists, will go to conferences every year and share practice. Mm-hmm. When was the last Reiki retreat designed for them to go and learn each other's motions? The closest you'll get to that is a psychic fair, where they offer each other free treatments. Like, do you know what I mean?
At a psychic fair, when they all talk, we know we've done psychic fairs. They all talk afterwards. They all go to each other and say, "Oh, I've been, that's when I found some of the most serious people with psychological issues is people that work at the psychic fair. There are psychics and counselors and that are there doing their shtick, and then afterwards they're completely fucked, and they start going to their friends or other people saying, "Look, my life's so fucked up. I need your help. I wonder what the crystals can do for me because the angels ain't doing fuck all."
And for me, that's what worries me. Is the best I've seen of that kind of, which is why we regularly attack the Reiki lot. But for multiple reasons, obviously, which I'm sure you mentioned in the first 15 minutes, but I wasn't here, so I get to rant too, which is, ultimately, the reason we dislike them is because, one, they don't actually know what they're talking about. So they do something without understanding it. Mm-hmm. So, and then they try and convince themselves that they understand it. But then if they did, they'd be able to diagnose and not actually be able to fix problems. But I've never met a Reiki practitioner, a person that's been to see a Reiki practitioner, that has ever stopped seeing the Reiki practitioner. There is no cure point. I've seen people go to a herbalist and get certain things fixed and treated. Other things are longer term because they deal with much bigger problems, a herbalist, and ultimately they will consult with other practitioners in order to, a herbalist might speak to a doctor and say, this treatment isn't working. What have you been prescribing? Can I be aware of, are there any things that we aren't aware of? Whereas a Reiki practitioner, I've never known someone who likes to go and have a couple of courses of Reiki every year stop going to see them because the problem is fixed. Mm-hmm. So that's my big bugbear. The second one is they like to call it an ancient practice, of which it is not. So, you know, something that was
The art
created
of
by the Japanese,
for a long time though.
the modern Japanese, is not something I can kind of, you know, allow people to talk about as an ancient practice. The other reason is the same reason is why I dislike Tibetan singing bowls, because there is no grounds for you to say that you'll even buy them from Tibetan people and say, oh, we make these up for the tourists. That doesn't mean singing bowls don't exist. What I'm saying is what we consume in the West is designed for Western consumption. So, you know, the same way with the bloody sage stick. You could go and actually spend a weekend with a true Native American tribe if you could get past the guard dog that is that arrangement. If you were trusted enough to be included in one of their sessions, I can highly presume that they would not hand you a sage stick to go home with, and kind of go, you need to be smoking your house 3 times a week in order to keep the demons out. You know,
on the edge of the reservation, they might have a gift shop.
Yes,
Maybe.
you know,
It all comes from China, maybe. I don't know. I've never been to a Native American gift shop, but I have heard stories from people that either are Native American or have Native American ancestry that there's this big thing about keeping things and cultural practices and stuff secret, but that some people will still offer a fake version of that to throw people off the scent. I mean, in witchcraft, we have this thing called Wicca to throw people off the scent.
it's a real practicing stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
real stuff, isn't it?
I think it's one of those things you have to take the rough with the smooth. And ultimately, if you want to go and spend ridiculous amounts of money on Reiki, that's entirely up to you. But I would like to hope that by the end of a series of sessions, you should have fixed a problem. Otherwise, why are you still going back? It's the same group of people that tend to go back to the same tarot reader every 3 months and spend their £100 or whatever it is to go and see that person that they like again. You know, there was a mixture of feelings about that for me, where you've got people that will go back and forth because they want to hear from a certain member of their family who's in the spirit world, and therefore, you know, that's their own personal set of torture, in order to keep going back and being that, you know, when you go and see a medium for that reason. You equally have those that go back and forth to a tarot reader just because they don't see beyond the what's that word? That phrase, entertainment purposes only. That they don't see past the trick.
I mean, there are con people out there, and then there are people that genuinely believe that they are good at what they do. You know, there are people that do angel card readings and crystal healing therapies and stuff like that think that what they're doing is good, useful, and actually works. I mean, there are many examples actually of people like homeopaths that give up and stop their Western, mundane, whatever you want to call it, scientific prescriptions that are given by medical doctors, and instead just use homeopathic remedies and die from it. There are famous cases of that where the homeopathic person actually believes in their stuff so much that they give up the pills and such, and they just go on the homeopathic remedies and things like that. You kind of think, I mean, you have to look at each case on an individual basis. Maybe this person was suffering from terminal cancer. Who knows? You know, or maybe it was a case of like they had something that would have been a treatable condition or a manageable condition that they could have lived for a long time, but they decided, oh, fuck it, I'll just get me some gorse.
Equally,
a lot.
Equally, none of them are perfect. Like, don't get me wrong. With my very limited understanding of pharmacology, was able to turn around to doctors and say, you really shouldn't be using those two things together. Oh yeah, I forgot. Like in that kind of moment of it's something they don't prescribe very often, or they're so used to looking at the individual problem in their head directly there and forgetting to look at the larger picture. You know, all practitioners are guilty of it occasionally. I just think that there are some that are perpetual pointless. Because ultimately, if they're not part of a treatment regime, then what's the point? Because there should be an end. And even if you're on a kind of cancer treatment or your diabetes, it's managing something. Do you know what I mean? Like it may not be the cure, but it is going to manage the symptoms, or it's going to manage, you know, you're aware of what the actual problem is. And that is the best that you can do. That's not the case, in my opinion, with Reiki practitioners, because they're not looking for the problem. They're solving a symptom for a short amount of time. You know, if it the same like, you know, when you go and see a sports massage, you go and get a sports massage, you know that is going to make it feel better, but ultimately you've got to change the way that you're playing, because you've been forced, you know, you've been overgoing on one foot in tennis. You know, you're going to have to go, actually, I'm hurt myself because I did something I shouldn't have done.
I got a golfer's elbow.
You know,
a little bit like tennis elbow. Tennis elbow is there. Golfer's elbow is there. It's also called squatter's elbow. But that's two different things. You know, squatter's elbow or golfer's elbow and tennis elbow. It affects it's a different condition. But that's through doing things in incorrect form and stuff like that. Using, you know, leverages and stuff like that. People are different. But that needs an understanding of what the problem is, you know. Because if I diagnose myself with tennis elbow and it's not tennis elbow, then the treatment would be technically a little bit different. Also, you have to think why you've got that condition in the first place. I think there's some people that are shitting a little bit on psychology. As a counsellor, the most toxic rooms I've sat in was a bunch of counsellors. I completely agree with that. I got a psychology degree. I worked bloody hard to get it. Comes useful in my practice, though. That's good. I think psychology potentially will be. Now, there's a big problem, I think, also within occultism, in that realistically, occultists study, if it was a science, it would be fringe science. It would be things almost super theoretical science. There is a theoretical physicist, and then they're going beyond that into the more crazy town, obscure. Then you've got your general occultists and stuff like that. We need to remember that we are occultists, and that as witches, magical practitioners, magicians, and the like, we are dabbling and trying to learn things that are way outside of the scope of current scientific understanding most of the time. And that's for all areas. So what you'll get is I've met people that come from a psychology background and they go on about, oh, well, this person shouldn't be dabbling in this, that person shouldn't be dabbling in that. And yet they themselves are dabbling with herbalism or something like that. One needs to remember that you cannot, to study witchcraft and occultism, you don't need to go and get a medical degree and a psych degree and a physics degree, all of those sorts of things. You don't need that to make a start. And if you do have those things, that isn't necessarily going to mean that you're a good occultist either. Some of the smartest people, scientists and stuff, don't make for particularly great occultists. Most of the time is the ones that come from a theoretical background, because they're not practical, they're reading and hypothesizing, the old armchair magicians and such, but like genuine real life experimentation stuff's very, very important when it comes to occultism. And what we need to make sure that we're doing as occultists and witches and that is that we, yes, do these experiments and things like that, but we're health and safety conscious. Okay. Now, there is a big aspect of morality and ethics and stuff like that comes in. I'm a big proponent of practicing things on people you dislike, because if it fucks up, then, you know, you won't get people in medical school teaching, well, you know, you're doing your first operation here, you know, junior doctor or someone that's in, you know, that. Can you bring in your own cadaver to practice on? Obviously, don't make it someone you love. Go and kill someone you dislike and bring it in, you know, or, oh, we're going to be going in and doing this. Maybe not practice on your mum. Bring someone else in and we'll, you know, start a tinkering. I know that in some industries that is a little bit different. I did speak to one of my exes, was a barber, right? And when they were doing barbering and stuff like that, they used to practice on those plastic heads with the hair and stuff like that. But before they graduate, they actually have to bring people into the college to practice cutting hair on, and they did fucking shit. Don't get me wrong, you get a free shit haircut and stuff like that, but they used to advertise for that. When I went to Ashley Down at City of Bristol College, they had the hair and beauty section was in the building next to the construction one. And they were always advertising for people who'd like to come in to get free haircuts, and no one ever fucking wanted to, because it would be student barbers and hairstylists that would just fuck it up. I don't know where we went with this, but what are we going to talk about in the last 10 minutes, Chris?
I think you were trying to say
or something.
I think you were trying to say that practice matters.
Practice matters. Practice
obviously, we practice on.
I tell you what's also extremely important, Chris, which is something I also don't see in the occult community, is fucking sharing. Okay, sharing knowledge doesn't happen. Oh my gosh, so many books published, and yet how many people are actually sharing genuine magical knowledge in those books? Not very fucking many of them. How many people out there actually have magical knowledge? Quite a few. How many of you are sharing it? You might take on one or two apprentices or train people, but you're not really putting it out there, which is very interesting from our perspective, because we're trying to put stuff out in the lowest common denominator. Well, maybe not the lowest, because we're not. Oh, I think we are on TikTok now, or I think I was on TikTok at one point. Yeah, we're putting things out in the lowest form, right? I suppose the one thing worse than TikTok would be a Llewellyn publications book, wouldn't it? But there we go. Here we go. What's this one all about? Liam, are you flashing at us? I don't think so. If you can see me flashing, then you ain't using your mundane eyes, petulant pixie. And no, I'm not wearing any knickers. Or sending mirror signals. Oh, because I'm swinging in my chair. Is that sending mirror signals? Swinging on your chair, the light hits the mirror. If he does it 3 times, free occult significantly is somehow significant in the occult world. So maybe petulant pixie, I am sending mirror signals, or maybe that is just the magical protections I've got on at the moment, some sort of magical shielding or something like that. I learned that from the New Agers, you know, make a little mirror shield and such. There's my mirror shield. It's so powerful that you can actually see it with your mundane eyes and not just your magical eyes. Okay, we got 5 minutes now left, Chris. Where else do you want to go with that? We're kind of talking a lot about healing, aren't we?
Yeah, so I don't know. It's a tricky one. Ultimately, they're all trying their best, you would hope. That's a rather large book plug, Liam.
What Crystal can't do? If you believe some Llewellyn book, you'd think it can do all things. It can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. Reiki Christ, healing. Shall I cast a spell?
Not at me, thank you. I'd rather you not poke me in the eye with that.
Cast a spell. No? Okay, wait then. I take it all back. Okay, so...
Do you know what you haven't done in this episode?
No, what haven't I not done? Taking the piss out of you? I can do that.
Well, no. We're talking about Reiki all day, and you haven't once clicked this one.
Iceland spaceport. You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
Okay. Now, there's many stories I could tell about Glastonbury with regards to healing and such like that. There's a certain place which I think is probably... Oh, I don't know. Which one's worse? The Glastonbury Goddess Temple or the Soul Therapy Centre? I don't know which one's the biggest scam, if I'm honest. I'm going to go with the Soul Therapy Centre, I think is the biggest scam. I've been in there a couple of times, and that is the most culty place I've ever been. And I've been in many different evangelical churches and Catholic churches and stuff like that. I've met Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses and stuff like that. I tell you what, one place more culty than the Church of Latter-day Saints, Soul Therapy Healing Centre, Glastonbury. Do you ever in Glastonbury? Go in. You'll regret it, but go in anyway. You haven't truly. There are cults, and then there are kind of like really in your face cults. Like you get like the Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, and you think when they knock on your door, you're like, oh my gosh, you are so sucked into a fucking cult. And then you think it can't possibly get any worse. And then you go in the Soul Therapy Centre, Glastonbury, and you think, oh my gosh, this is so culty, it's a parody of a fucking cult. I mean, they've got a tent and a cult leader that actually thinks they're the reincarnation of Jesus and Buddha and a bunch of others all in one. You know, it's so, and they've got like pyramids and shit and all sorts of stuff you can buy ridiculous. They dress people up in CSI suits, you know, those clean suits and that. But that is how culty it is, right? If South Park was to do an episode where one of them joins a cult, it would not be as stereotypical as the Soul Therapy Centre. Don't sue me, bro. That's just opinion. Oh, I had invested Kono with my fae. Why I was late coming on. I am naughty being late. Right. I didn't realise you was late. That's fine. It's fine. You can listen again at the very beginning. Don't worry about it. Chris was late, you know? I mean, if the people that run the show are late, I'm pretty sure, Deanna, that you can be late if you want to. In fact, I think Chris has pressed the pause button on the image and he's pretending to still be here, but actually the image is just paused. He does that. You'll notice that. You'll think, oh, I want to bugger off, but I can't. So I'll click the pause button and then it will look like he's there and that he's just stuck, but then he'll go off. Anyway, kids, so that is it for this edition of the Fausty Witches. I'm wondering whether we need to do one because there was quite a lot of interest in psychology, and I know there are many people for some reason that are pretty fucked up that forgive me for saying this, but you are pretty fucked up that all have degrees in psychology and are all fans of the Witchcraft Shop and the Fausty Witches show and stuff. Don't quite know what that says about us or this show, but there are a number of you out there. I'm wondering whether we need to do a Fausty Witches on psychology, psychobabble, Chris. Thinking that could be an interesting one. We could get all Jungian in it.
Oh, God. Yes, sure.
We could talk about archetypes. We could
go. You could do the psychology of tarot. Would be a good one.
Before they're allowed to practice witchcraft. I'm pretty sure with one of them we did once. Actually, I'm pretty sure that is a genuine one from what I remember. I know I said that to someone. that's it for this edition of the Fausty Witches. The fastest witch of them all is going to goodbye by waving. Wave goodbye. Yeah. There we go. That is officially the end of the show now because the Fausty one has waved goodbye.